I'm genuinely looking forward to seeing how all the Robert Pattinson stans out there in the world are going to react to his performance in this film because, oh boy, he's a scummy guy. My thoughts on The Devil All the Time coming up.
Did you rub my land?
1,000 generations to the Enoch.
Here we go.
Hey, how's it going, everyone? And welcome to FilmSpeak, where the conversation continues after the credits. If this is your first time checking out one of our videos, hey, my name is Griffin Schiller. I'm an LA-based entertainment journalist and film critic, and if you want to be a part of that conversation, consider subscribing to the channel for more insight, analysis, and interviews behind your favorite movies. The Devil All the Time is directed by Antonia Campos, and it's based on the book of the same name written by Donal Ray Pollock, and this film boasts an all-star cast consisting of Tom Holland, Robert Pattinson, Bill Skarsgard, Sebastian Stan, Riley Keough, Haley Bennett, and Jason Clarke. A young man is devoted to protecting his loved ones in a town full of corruption and sinister characters. So The Devil All the Time is definitely one of those films that's gunning for award season. I mean, just look at this cast, the subject matter, the fact that it's a post-World War II movie and it's dealing with very philosophical and heavy themes. The Devil All the Time is a very powerful, bleak, and disturbing film. It definitely will scratch that psychological crime thriller itch, but it has a lot more on its mind, and that's sort of where I found most of the intrigue and what I kind of latched onto the most with this film. One of the big reasons that people are excited about it is this all-star cast. And to be honest with you, the cast is the main selling point of this film, and it's the reason why it's as good as it is. Everyone is in top form. I mean, Tom Holland, again, proves that he is far more than the MCU's Spider-Man. I mean, if you just followed his work from before he was cast in that role, you'll know that he's been taking a lot of, indie films, stuff that really challenges him as a performer and allows him to grow with each passing performance. And I think in this film, he's very much internal, but he's able to convey so much with his eyes. This guy who's lived such a traumatic life and how those dark early life experiences kind of shaped his worldview. And I don't think that we've ever really seen Tom Holland go this dark before. And it's not like, his character is so dark and so gloomy and depressing, but it's definitely a more heavy performance and a heavy character here than I think what we're used to seeing from him. And so I was really floored by what he was able to do with the material here. Again, it shouldn't be a surprise. Tom Holland is exceptional, but my God, this performance is so good. And then, of course, the other reason people were very excited for this film is Robert Pattinson, who continues to select interesting projects to be a part of. This one is no different, and I promise you, you have never seen Robert Pattinson like you've seen him in this film. He's got a very high-pitched southern voice. He's so manipulative, but slightly charming, but he's very snaky and scummy. Some of the stuff that occurs towards the back half of this film with his character is just, you want to punch him in the face. He's such a scummy kind of guy. And so I liked being able to see Robert Pattinson sink his teeth into a role like that and completely transform himself. He doesn't have the most screen time, but what he does with it, he's by far the biggest scene stealer out of this entire film. Jason Clarke and Riley Keough as this twisted serial killer couple make for a very interesting pairing, and I like seeing Riley Keough in a role where she feels trapped by the situation that she's in. She's definitely very vulnerable and doesn't quite know how to get out of the situation, and so you start to see that take its toll on her. And I think, again, she's another one who gives a very internal performance. I have a lot of empathy for her character, even though she doesn't necessarily make the best decisions. And of course, we know with Jason Clarke, he's really good at playing these just twisted individuals that have like weird kinks, and in this film, he definitely has several weird kinks, and exploring their relationship was one of the more intriguing aspects of the film. But I have to say, as a whole, I found their character arc and the thread there to be a little unnecessary and weirdly detached from the central narrative until we get to a certain point. Every time we would switch back from the Tom Holland narrative to this one, I would just go, okay, I'm a little bit more invested in the Tom Holland, Robert Pattinson thing. This one isn't quite cutting it for me. And Sebastian Stan, who I also think gives a solid performance, nothing to really write home about, but he's also sort of connected with Riley Keough and Jason Clarke, and I don't feel like they necessarily explored his character as much as they probably could have. He's definitely a guy who's corrupt. He's on a bit of a power trip, but as one of the themes is throughout this film are just siblings being overprotective and, you know, righting wrongs with excessive violence. He definitely sort of falls into that category, and a lot of his actions really mirror that of Tom Holland's, but the way in which they choose to react and the resolution to their arcs are very different. A lot of the characters in this film are incredibly flawed individuals, many of them unlikable and the rest of them irredeemable. But the film makes an attempt to have you sympathize with each of them because of the dire situations that they sort of find themselves in. I mean, it's really an exploration of the pitfalls of this small town, rural America. There are these devout Christians and holy men and these people who are put up on a pedestal just because of their devotion to faith, when in reality they shouldn't be. However, the fact that they're up on this pedestal gives them leverage over everyone beneath them. And in so doing, it's how they're able to feel closer to the Lord, and they're able to abuse that power for their own personal gain. And the people below them, they feel as though they need to, you know, engage in these misguided attempts in order to feel closer to God, for God to be able to forgive them, when in reality they're all just doing these horrible actions, and they're ultimately going to wind up in the same place as the people on the other side here who are doing these twisted, sick, and violent actions is a way to sort of feel power. Jason Clarke's character specifically is only able to feel closer to God in the presence of death. And the interesting comment the film makes is that, you know, it doesn't really matter which side of the coin you fall on. If you do these awful things, you're all gonna wind up in the same place. There's one line in particular that really sums this whole thing up, and it comes from Robert Pattinson's character, and we've seen it in the trailer, and he's talking about delusions and all that stuff. He says the line, "It is our delusions that lead us to sin." If you look at the God-fearing people, it's their delusion that they are doing the right thing that leads them to commit these horrible acts of, you know, whatever in the name of God. And if you look at the other side with these killers and undesirables, the delusion is that by continuing to do these awful things, it's how they're able to live as people. There is no other way for them to live, and so it's their delusions that lead them to sin. And so that whole monologue that Pattinson gives there is probably my favorite part of the entire film, because it's a great encapsulation of what exactly this film is saying. And, you know, only in small town America like this are people willing to die and are going to die as, you know, misguided attempts to attract the attention of God prove that the resurrection of people through belief is possible, that thrill killings are, you know, art, and serial killings are we're doing these things in the name of art, killing as a self-defense, you know, severe beatings as justice. It's twisted and it's wrong, and, you know, no wonder that these fanatics sort of are birthed out of these really just grotesque and bleak circumstances. And so literally this film is saying that the devil is in all things. The devil is all around us. And it's up to us to sort of acknowledge on our own moral compass, you know, what is right and what is wrong. And I think that Holland's character is that moral compass. Even though he does have his own warped sense of justice, it's through him that we're able to find some sort of salvation. And there's something else that I found very powerful about this film is how the parental figures and the circumstances that they sort of go through, the sins of their past or whatever, sort of trickled down and affected the children in some capacity. Tom Holland's father, played by Bill Skarsgard, who's fantastic, by the way. This is a phenomenal performance from Bill Skarsgard, and I think the relationship that he sort of has with, the younger version of Tom Holland's character really forms who that individual is. And so we get to the point where Tom Holland enters the scene, and he very much has the same issues as his father with a little bit more perspective. His father was a bit of a fanatic towards the end, and we start to see how Holland has a jaded outlook on religion as a result of that. And so there's interesting sort of parallels like that sort of find their way into the younger generation when the focus sort of shifts from the parents to the kids. That's why this film sort of reminds me of A Place Beyond the Pines in a little bit, or it feels like that's the movie that this film is trying to emulate. It doesn't necessarily do it as well as that film, but I can see where they were sort of starting to go with the thematics there and the structure of the movie. And speaking of the structure, I feel like while I enjoyed the way the scenes were placed and stuff, aside from the poor balancing act of the two arcs going on here, I felt like it was a little too similar to just reading a book. And it sort of ties into the fact that there's a narration that goes on throughout this film, and I don't think it necessarily works all of the time. It kind of kept me feeling as though, okay, we're in this story instead of, oh, we're experiencing these real circumstances with real individuals. And I think sometimes the narration was necessary, but I truthfully could have done without it. It definitely would have been a little more subtle if they had not structured it so much like reading a novel. I feel like maybe that would have also helped the film feel a little more natural. But again, this is just like some serious nitpicks here. It's not something that is detrimental to the film. I think it's still a very excellent movie. Before I give my final verdict on The Devil All the Time, guys, why don't you take a second here and like this video, share with your friends if you feel so inclined, and subscribe to this channel so you don't miss out on more movie reviews, interviews, analysis, and all that good stuff. We like to say that the conversation continues after the credits, and so of course we'd love to have you be a part of that conversation. So The Devil All the Time, as you can probably tell by my review here, it's still one that I'm sort of thinking about and pondering. I think it has a lot to say, and I enjoyed the philosophical exploration and, these different characters who feel that they're doing these horrendous atrocities in a virtuous manner. I don't know, it was just like really interesting to tackle that concept and see Tom Holland be at the center of it all, just being this moral compass. It's definitely a very bleak film. I don't think it's going to be for everyone. I can see how some people would get bored with it, how people really would struggle to find any redeeming or likable characters. And then I also feel like it doesn't quite balance the two arcs that are going at the same time. The Tom Holland, Robert Pattinson arc, and then the Jason Clarke, Sebastian Stan, and the Riley Keough arc. They're kind of running parallel for a lot of the film, and they don't necessarily connect until the end. And so every time they're switching back and forth, I'm just like, why are we doing this? It just feels like a detour. The performances are excellent. It's a solid script. I think a lot of people are going to definitely watch this movie for the performances, as they should. And it's very confident directing too from Antonia Campos. And so while it's probably not going to win any awards, at least from a technical perspective or like writing or anything like that, I think maybe some of the performances stand a chance, but ultimately it's just one of those really solid ensemble thrillers that has some interesting things to say. And so for all of those reasons and the reasons I mentioned throughout this review, I'm ultimately going to be giving The Devil All the Time a 7.8 out of 10. But now I want to hear from you all, and I want to know what your favorite ensemble film is. I'm talking about those films that boast a great cast and really sell themselves on that cast. I want to hear about it down in the comment section below. And then also, if you've seen The Devil All the Time, I want to hear your thoughts and opinions on that film down there as well. As always, guys, be sure to like FilmSpeak on Facebook, follow us on Twitter simply by searching FilmSpeak, and if you like me specifically and you like what I have to say, you can give me a follow on Twitter at Griff Schiller. All right, guys, thanks for checking out this review, and I will catch you next time. Take care.